And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on in to the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, powered by Ameren, Illinois, powered by Gray Bar, and driven by our friends at Munganess St. Louis Acura. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. Claibs, hello, and a Merry Christmas to you. Last show before Christmas for us here.
It's here. It's here. It's here. I'm not. So you know me well. I don't get excited about holidays. I mean, I know that some people really get into them. I appreciate their effort, but I mean, I'm going to enjoy the time off. But I'm not that person that's scrambling on December 24th in the stores and stuff like that. I've got other things I'd rather do.
Yeah, having a 10-year-old,
you have no choice.
Yeah, I have no choice. His mom not thrilled this year about the amount of WWE stuff that he's getting for Christmas. Something clicked in the last 6 to 9 months, Claibs, that has him that has made him a huge wrestling fan. And I mean, it's nothing.
Well, hopefully he'll grow out of it.
I'm not doing anything different. I mean, you know how much I like it, and I'm not doing anything different as far as the way I'm pushing him towards it, but something just clicked with him with how much he likes it. So I think there's going to be about 6 different items under the Christmas tree that are wrestling related for him this year. And she is not happy about it. No,
I'm kind of siding with her.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So yeah, I have that to look forward to next week. I thought today we'd start with NFL, as we're 3 weeks after tonight's games. We are 3 weeks away from the end of the regular season. At looking at the standings, looking at what happened this past week, I mean, we've gone back and forth about who the best team in the NFL is, and the Eagles still left to play tonight, but 49ers, Dolphins, they really put their stamp on things this past Sunday.
Wait a minute. What about Baltimore? Nobody's talking about Baltimore.
I've talked last week. I mean, Lamar Jackson, I think he's a plus 500 right now to win the MVP. And I feel like he would be my pick if you're going just off the quarterback position right now in the NFL. But I just think the statement wins that you're seeing week in, week out of the 49ers and the Dolphins put them as your 2 favorites, right?
I don't know. I mean, the 49ers had a bump in the road during the course of the year. So did the Dolphins.
The bump in the road for the 49ers was that
they lost 3 in a row.
Was that Deebo Samuel wasn't active for those 3 games they lost in a row.
So, and that's a good point you make, because if Deebo Samuel was the guy, the X factor here, why do you want to get an MVP to Brock Purdy?
I don't. Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't understand the love of giving. I mean, he's leading the league and everything, but
he wasn't the week Samuel wasn't around. So
no, he wasn't.
I think the best player on that team, or the best offensive player on that team, is McCaffrey, because he can hurt you in a lot of different ways.
The touchdown he scored yesterday, the reception, whatever it was, 40-some whatever yards. Claims, I have never seen somebody so wide open to where they caught a ball, fell, got back up, and was able to jog into the end zone.
You know what? I'm glad you used the word "caught a ball." Is it me or guys dropping balls all over the league? And we're not talking about in inclement weather. We're talking about in reasonable weather. These guys have these tack-fied gloves on. I mean, they have various drills that they go through. I don't know if I've ever seen more drop balls or tip balls this year. I can't recall.
I mean, if you want to go, if we're going to jump all over the map with the NFL and what we saw yesterday, the folks that want to sit here and talk about how the Bears need to move on from Justin Fields, I don't know what more Justin Fields needs to do, because he dropped a dime into one of his wide receivers' hands yesterday that had 5 yards on the defender. The ball was just dropped. The ball just hit off his hands and fell incomplete. And then the play at the end of the game, I don't know how that. I mean, I don't know how that happens.
I don't either.
I don't know how that ends up as an interception when you.
I mean, it hit him right in the stomach. I mean, I don't know.
As he's sitting on the ground. I mean, he's sitting right there, and they basically just patted the ball down into his hands.
I don't. Yeah, and I've said this at the beginning of the year. I don't really think this is a really good brand of football that we're watching for a lot of different reasons. They can't catch, they don't tackle, they barely block, and we're down to four string quarterbacks in some situations. And by the way, the quarterback situation is one that these backups, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard of very many of them from even from their college days. So maybe they score well on the test. Maybe they're guys that, quick learners. I don't know. But it's kind of a head scratcher of a year. I just don't think this has been a very good brand.
Okay, but you say you mean I agree with you that yeah, we haven't heard of them. We've talked about this a little bit. We've talked about this a few times during the season so far. So we say that, but then you have a guy that comes out like Jake Browning and has been able to pick up the slack of the losing Joe Burrow for the Bengals and has been, I mean, almost perfect when you look at what
Yeah.
he has done. You look back to the game against the Ravens when he came in was 8 of 14, a quarterback rating of 93 in that one, then quarterback ratings of 96, 115, 122, and
Okay, hold
97.
on. Time out for a minute.
Yeah.
Can you explain the quarterback rating?
I can't explain what all goes
Okay,
into
then
it.
don't
I'm just
use it.
okay, but
Don't use it.
so I am just putting that number out there
Okay.
to
Because
show where he has been because I know the perfect score is what is 156, but anything over 100 it means you had a really good game. So that's what I'm
yeah,
throwing
you
out there
okay.
as far as that. I just didn't want to sit here and read off his completion percentage, yardage, and touchdowns for all those games. I'm trying to save time here.
So here's what I would say to the Browning young man. Um, maybe miscast in other situations where maybe because he maybe wasn't a high pick or some scout didn't like him as much as somebody else, he didn't pass the eye test. It just goes to show you how often the league misses on
Hmm.
players because they typecast them because of some other shortcoming. I guess Tom Brady might be the best example of that, being a fourth round draft choice and ending up being one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. I just think you have to be in a position to be prepared, to be able to adapt, and be able to pick yourself up and continue. I've always felt like for me, when I represented players, you have probably had a 3-year window. If you weren't with somebody, and I'm not talking about on the practice squad, if you weren't on a roster within 3 years, then you should be applying your degree or whatever other skill you have to another career because it's not going to work because there's been too many people who have gone through the system and you're easy to forget because people would say, well, why isn't he here by now? And but again, I go back to my original point, just being in the right position, and you have to wonder how many other Brownings are out there
Right.
and not just at quarterback. I mean, I think that there's some guys that probably do some jobs in other positions that just don't get a look. Maybe they were injured. Maybe they just were too far behind on the depth chart. This is a funny game, man. It's about how they assess personnel.
And then he gets to go out there and play this past weekend against a team that cut him a few times in the
Yeah,
Vikings. I mean, if you want to compare it to a situation, maybe an Adolis Garcia type situation
yeah,
where he was, it's not, the Vikings cut him a few times. I mean, this isn't the Bengals didn't see him as a starter. This isn't a case of a missed opportunity or missed scouting. It's a lot of different teams passed on the guy.
yeah, but maybe with good reason. Maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe he wasn't a quick learner. Maybe he didn't have a big arm that they look for. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into why teams move on from you. But I'm glad he's having a shot. Hopefully, he'll go into camp next year and be more respected with regard to his impact. And there's some other guys that are trying to do that as well. So, anyway, I go back to the original point about the NFL.
Yeah,
Um, we don't know who the best team is because it really does make a difference right now. Other than if you want to be seated properly or have a high seed where you get the bye. And I know most teams are like, hey, we'll take a bye at this time of the year, rest up some people if we can. But that's really the only thing that counts at this point because we'll find out who the best team is on the last game of the season.
yeah.
And whether they've been the best team throughout, but the last game of the season is when they need to be the best team.
And looking at this year compared to what we've seen in the past, where you kind of look at it and you say, you know what, that conference championship game is going to be the Super Bowl, or when you look
Mm-hmm.
at and you look kind of through the season. I mean, last few years it always seemed like Chiefs Bills was the one we were looking at, and it was like, okay, whoever wins that, that's who's going to win the Super Bowl. You look at it this year, and you look at just how top heavy some of these conferences are. Both conferences are. You mentioned the Ravens and how little respect that they're getting overall, being the 1 seed overall right now. And you look at where the Dolphins have been and the points that the Dolphins are putting up week in and week out, and how explosive that offense is when really, I mean, their defense yesterday shutting out the Jets was just as impressive. Kansas City seems like they still haven't been able to find their groove yet. Maybe that's going to be the case. Maybe they only win one game in the playoffs and they're one and done in the postseason this year. But they have 3 more games to figure out what this offense is, or how to get by with some of these wide receivers that they're throwing out there. And they're going to be in the postseason. They're not going to be the 1 seed, but they're still going to have to fight their way through. But that's a team still, you don't want to catch them when they figure it out, one of those in that divisional series, or that divisional round, or wherever.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. They basically they had to have somebody catch a football. If they have somebody catch a football, Kansas City wouldn't be in this predicament. The defense has been bent a little bit this year, but they found a way to make plays. Offensive line has been average, and I thought they would be much better than this before the start of the season, but they've had some injuries along the way. But the one thing they have experience. They have a lot of guys from the coaching staff on down that's been there, understands how the game is, turned up a notch when you get to postseason. They've been able to play in the elements and had some reasonable success. Their running game is still kind of suspect, and they're going to need it. I don't think you can trick people on, when you get to postseason like they've done here recently. But overall, you can't overlook them. You can't overlook them. You mentioned Miami. I thought Miami's defense, you mentioned they shut out the Jets yesterday. Well, who can't shut out the Jets? I mean, and I like Salah. I mean, the Aaron Rodgers thing has been a debacle, not only from an injury standpoint, but the players. He said we got to bring this guy in. None of those guys have contributed.
It's almost worse that he got hurt, and he's been. If he was playing all year, you'd have whatever you could be able to. You'd take whatever he did on the field this year, and you'd be able to grade him on that. But now that he's been hurt and talking all year, I'm going to come back this week. I'm going to come back off of this, and now you have just more added drama from him, and more headlines that he's making, not being on the field every week, and all the what ifs, and I could have done that, or I could have, if I was healthy, I could have done this type stuff.
Look for Aaron Rodgers to start being at more premieres and red carpet galas at this point, because he's about to check out of this season. I mean, you may see him on Sundays.
Yeah.
After he's flown in from somewhere else on Saturday night, but it's over. And I wouldn't run him out there. Especially at his age, because you're trying to squeeze one more year out of him. And you want to make sure he goes in the next year ready to go.
Exactly.
But they've got some bigger issues to deal with from a personnel standpoint, because at some point they're going to need another quarterback, and Zach Wilson's not the answer.
The one of the teams, I mean, these two teams, ones that are, they've been notorious for being bottom dwellers in the NFL. You have the Browns and the Lions that are making such big headlines this year. The Browns, another case of having a backup quarterback.
That's their fourth one, right?
It is. They've gone through. I mean, Joe Flacco was auditioning for jobs on the NFL Network,
right?
And before he finally was like, okay, I think one of the guys said that he didn't get a job that he wanted, so he was like, all right, I might as well go to this tryout for the Browns, and the Browns gave him a job, and now he's out there just kind of throwing the ball all over the place. I mean, every last throw in that arm that there's left, I'm pretty sure he's 38, 39 years old.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing he has working for him. That's not a bad collection of offensive players starting with the offensive line. They're not bad up front.
No.
And
they got good wide receivers.
They have some very good receivers. Kareem Hunt can give you some rushing yards inside. So he at least has some weapons around him. But I think the key to the Cleveland Browns and a guy who nobody talks about being the MVP, who can block Myles Garrett?
Right.
Myles Garrett changes the game whenever he steps on the field. So it's not a bad team. And you know what? Joe, if they get in, and it looks like they will, they could be a handful for somebody because they have very good special teams also. So you better figure out how to deal with them, and they understand how to play in the elements. So they may not get a home game. Well, if they win a division, they would. But
Yeah.
if they win the division, if they get a home game, then they're gonna be a handful in that first round.
Have you talked to Howard Richards yet about the what the Cowboys did yesterday?
I don't know. No, I haven't. I think he's probably in therapy right now. But here's the thing that I will tell you about yesterday. If you watch the first two series, the Cowboys' offensive line just mauled Buffalo. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't score touchdowns, but they pushed them around so much. I'm saying to myself, "Uh oh." And Buffalo was a little short up front too. They had a couple good starters that weren't playing. And I'm saying to myself, "Man, this could get out of hand quickly." And then all of a sudden, Buffalo figured it out. They started to do some things to Dallas that they weren't accustomed to. So I'm not sure, who Dallas is because they haven't beat anybody good.
They need to play
Most
at
of their
home.
records, yeah, they
They
have to
need
play
they
at
they
home
need
and
to
they have
play
to
at
play
home.
teams that are under 500.
That's what it
So
is.
I just don't know. And I guess the other thing is, if you're a Cowboy fan, you have to be saying, "Here we go again."
Mm-hmm.
Right near the end of the season, we're going to stumble, stub our toe, and we're not going to win the division. So it's here we go again, and I don't know who you make the scapegoat this time around.
The back to the Dolphins real quick as we wrap up our NFL talk here on the Ameren Illinois Lunch Show. They have been just beating up on some of the worst teams in the NFL. Their schedule the past few weeks has been Vegas, the Jets twice, the Commanders, and then a loss to Tennessee. The final 3 weeks of the year, we're sitting here talking about if they can be the best team in the NFL or not, or one of the top teams. They will end the season the final 3 weeks against Dallas, at Baltimore, and against Buffalo.
Well, they have their hands full, and you know what? If they survive that without key injuries, then you better start paying attention to them.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned their offense. Defensively, they've really done a nice job, man. They're big up front. The corners they don't have to blitz a lot. I mean, because they can play straight up in most cases. So I really like what they're doing, but we're going to find out who they really are coming up in the next few weeks.
Final game tonight of Week 15. The Eagles at the Seahawks. The Eagles win tonight, and they move out in front in that NFC East, and have a chance to win that and stay in line for that number one overall seed in the NFC.
Well, the key is Jalen Hurts going to play? I know he's been dealing with a little bit of an illness. So whoever the backup is, I would assume got more of the reps this week in practice. And Pete Carroll may not have as much as he'd like to have as far as personnel, but defensively, he can make your night interesting. So Philadelphia really needs to be careful about this game. This could be a true trap game for them.
A fun week next week with the way Christmas falls next week. The NFL, you have a game on Thursday, you have 2 games on Saturday, a handful of games on Sunday, and then a triple header on Christmas Monday. So the NFL is trying to take some of the pie away from the NBA on Christmas Day
Well,
next
how many
next
games does
week.
the NBA? The NBA has what, 4 or 5 games?
Five,
Yeah.
5 games next week. Yeah,
So you know what? You'll have plenty of action, and that's kind of cool. I mean, the NBA started this whole Christmas thing about 50 years ago, maybe longer than that, because the only game that would be Phoenix Suns would always play on Christmas Day, and then they started to expand it. Here comes the Chicago Bulls. They get them involved, and now,
Bulls and Knicks like every year. Bulls and
yeah,
Knicks. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And so now you have multiple teams playing, and you look up the matchups; they're all pretty good matchups for one
yeah.
reason or another. So, I would just say make sure that you have plenty of food close by. Figure out when you can open up the presents for those who do, and we'll go from there. I think I'm going to spend some time with my kids and maybe make a visit to a couple of other people, but I'll be close by. But
You,
let me ask you this:
yeah.
Are you one? Can you watch a game wire to wire anymore? I know you talk about the NFL, the red zone you have,
Yeah.
but do you ever sit down and watch a game to the point where I'm gonna say you have to chart every play, but do you watch it wire to wire?
I will for baseball. For football, it's to the point with football. the way I view stuff, and Claibs, I imagine you're the same way with just the amount of games that we have watched over the
Mm-hmm.
years and not having that emotional tie into
Right.
teams that people that are maybe watching right now, listening to this, would have when it comes to sporting events. I don't have that emotional tie, so I don't feel the need to do that.
I'm the
If
same
it's
way.
yeah, if
No.
it's a championship game for something, or it's a matchup that that you kind of look at the calendar, you're like, wow, I got to see this, two juggernauts going at it. I'll sit there and I'll try to give it my all, but it's real hard for me at this point to sit and watch a
Yeah.
game. And I just think that's more aligns the profession than it is just me as a person, I think.
I think that's the same for me, Joe. We watch games for a living, and I find myself watching other things on Sunday other than football. I mean, I'll stick my head in the door on a game, but man, I'm watching a documentary or a movie. Like I'm into watching Reacher,
Okay.
season 2, and I'm 3 episodes in and can't wait to see more of it. But my point being, I'm not one that is, and because I don't gamble on games, I don't have any kids playing in the games. We don't have any personal favorites. Those would be the reasons I would watch them for wire to wire. But
Yeah.
uh, and I kind of think, unless you're rooted because of the reasons I just mentioned, I think a lot of people kind of stray off because there's so many games on.
Yeah. I mean, I just listed everything that you could do next week. By the way, I'm on Suits. I'm on season 4 of Suits. I don't know if you've seen that or watched that one. It was on
Uh,
USA, but it's on Netflix
who's
now.
in it? Who's
I
in it?
I couldn't tell you the names of the actors in it. I do not know the names of the
That's
actors that
good
are
though.
in it.
You know what? I kind of like those kind of programs where we're seeing people, develop
Yeah,
in front of us, and you'll say, "Oh, I remember when he was in Suits or whatever,"
exactly.
and
By the
that's where we're headed.
To wrap it up, next Monday for the NBA Christmas games, here's what you have: you have the Bucks at the Knicks, you have the Warriors at the Nuggets, Celtics at the Lakers,
Mm,
76ers at the Heat, and then Mavericks at the Suns. So
wow,
Claibs, yeah, your Celtics Lakers matchup on Christmas. That's your 4 p.m. Prime time matchup of the day.
interesting. And
Yeah.
you mentioned all those games. I can give you an MVP candidate from every one of those teams. I mean, I give the NBA a lot of credit, man. When they put that schedule together, they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're showcasing teams that you normally wouldn't see a great deal of. I mean, let's face it, Denver Nuggets were not a household name until they won the NBA championship.
Right.
We know about the Knicks and the Bucks. I mean, and here, Knicks. Two things: the Knicks haven't been relevant since the mid '90s. They haven't won in over 50 years. Okay, no, yeah, over 50 years they haven't won. Why do people continue to say that's the most famous building in sports? They don't have a bunch of banners hanging from there.
They have. I mean, Billy Joel's got a banner hanging up there.
Okay. And I'm talking about championships.
They don't have many of those hanging up there. No.
No, for neither them or the Rangers. Rangers and the Knicks were
Yeah.
relevant at the same time in the
Yeah.
mid 90s.
Yeah.
So I don't get the fascination with that. But Giannis will go in there and drop 50 on them if they don't
Yeah.
watch out.
And you know what? There's going to be plenty of kids in New York that are waking up. They're going to have tickets for that game, and they're just going to
Well,
go.
they must have rich parents because it's not cheap to go to a
Right?
Knicks game these
I
days.
know. Hey, you know what is though? If you're looking for ticket packs before Christmas, the St. Louis Cardinal ticket packs starting now at $55. They have those ticket packs available. They have the bobblehead collection. They have the opening day collection. All of the teams that you want to see, you can find a ticket pack for Cardinal baseball and get those. Go to cardinals.com and buy those ticket packs today. You'll have them immediately, so you don't have to worry about any kind of shipping or anything that'll get here before Christmas. Do so, and also check out the new all-inclusive area. They just announced last week too, the 703 Club that
I'm
they
looking
are
forward
going
to
to be
that.
debuting. I am too. Looking at the pictures of it that are out there and seeing just where it is and knowing that area at Busch Stadium, and also seeing the menu. Did you see the menu of the food that
Yeah.
they're going to be serving at the
Yeah.
703? Smash burgers, shrimp,
Well,
all the
I'm there.
yeah. Yeah,
You know
so
I'm there.
lots of different things at the 703 Club. Hey, let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk some baseball, some Cardinal baseball, and all around Major League Baseball when we come back. It is the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura here on Claibs Online.
Let me get this straight. Gray Bar is a distributor?
Yep. For more than 150 years, we supported electrical and datacom projects all over the country.
So you can get me products wherever and whenever I need them.
Yep. Thanks to our expansive national logistics network.
For any industry?
Yep. From construction sites and industrial plants to schools, hospitals, and just about everything in between.
So you could say Gray Bar is much more than a distributor.
Yep, you could say that.
They really do it all.
Yep. When you need a hand powering, connecting, or maintaining your operations, join the thousands of professionals who rely on Gray Bar to help keep them up and running. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Back here on the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura here on ClaibsOnline.com. Claibs, we're about a week removed from the Shohei Ohtani contract being announced. That was last Saturday. Details of that came out, around Monday afternoon with all of the deferred money and the way that deal was going to go. Since then, I really thought that the Shohei deal was going to be the one that kind of broke the dam, and we saw everybody else kind of signed before the end of December. And really, there was not a whole lot of movement in baseball after that deal was announced.
Well, I didn't really think Shohei was going to have an impact on the rest of the field. I mean, everybody knew there was a handful of teams that were going to compete for him. I think teams that felt like they needed to do some other things are still in the process. Now, I think if there was an impact, maybe it was the structure of the contract that other teams are now stepping back, looking at, saying, this could be interesting. And here's why. You look at some teams that don't have a cemented TV deal, and they have to watch their money. And if they can get somebody to defer, and if you're in the right state where there's no state taxes, whether you're in Texas or whether you're in Florida and obviously California, you might want to step back and look at this deal differently. So that may have had something to do with why we've seen some teams maybe slow down their pace. And obviously, when you think about some of the pitching that's out there, they're being coveted by some really, exorbitant teams with a robust payroll. So I really look at them saying to themselves, let's take a deep breath here. Let's figure it out. Now, that's not an excuse for everybody else to sit back and wait on the market. Hey, at some point, you better make the market yourself, okay?
Yeah.
You can't sit back and say, oh, we lost this guy because we waited too long, because we want to see what the market looked like. Hey, every now and then you have to set the market if you really need a player. And the issue I have, Joe, if you're the Cardinals, it's not like there's a ton of impact relievers that can help your team. Yeah, there's a lot of relievers out there, but how many of them can actually help your team? And I think that's something you have to take a long, hard look at, which is why if you know who you want, go get them instead of waiting for this thing to pass you by. There just aren't as many guys out there as you think.
The Cardinals were linked to another Japanese arm this past weekend, Yuki Matsui, a name that the Cardinals were linked to prior to the start of the hot stove season, and now apparently a name that was in town this past week. A left-handed reliever, has a whole lot of saves over in Japan, saved 30 or more games for the Golden Eagles 6 times in his career, and with an ERA around 1.5 last year. So a very good pitcher over in Japan. Never really sure how that's going to translate over to Major League Baseball, but a name that the Cardinals have been on and had at Busch Stadium apparently last week.
Well, here's where it stands out for me. Closing experience. Now, you may say, well, it's not the big leagues. I think when you close at a high level at professional baseball, I don't care what league it is. I think we know that the Japanese leagues have competent players, hence the reason why we're trying to sign a few of them. So I'm looking for more experience in the bullpen from a closing standpoint. I don't know, with Ryan Helsley's health the last couple of years, and when he was healthy, he wasn't, a guy who could take the ball every day. I have to have insurance, have to have it. And was talking to Ali Marmol the other day about the fact you're going to have 8 guys, and you have to have 4 of them that should be ready every night. 4 of the 8 have to be available to you every night. And if they mirror the other 4, so be it. And that means closer, setup guy, bridge guy, and just a guy to have around to get you an out to end an inning. You have to have 4 of those guys every night the way you use your bullpen. And if you don't, and this is where I think the Dodgers are going to have a problem. The Dodgers went out, and when you look at their team, they're pretty good 1 through 6 in the batting order.
Yeah.
Those last 3 outs might be a little easier to get. The other thing is when you look at their pitching staff, they having some guys that are coming off of injury, young guys who haven't eaten a lot of innings in their careers, and you have a bullpen that you just don't know enough about. So I think the Dodgers are a team that still has some holes to address. And when you look around baseball, there are a few other teams that you think can compete that are going to deal with that same issue, which goes back to my original point about get these relievers signed now.
And right now, Cardinals also linked to Phil Maton and Hector Neris as well.
I'd take both of them.
Yeah, and if they are able to load up the bullpen like that, I mean, this is a team that went out there and completely overhauled the entire pitching staff this offseason and did exactly what they said they were going to do. That's recognizing a weakness and going out and addressing it head on.
So here, I'm going to spend Mr. DeWitt's money here for a minute. I'm going to sign Hicks, Maton, Neris, and the Japanese pitcher. I'm going to sign all 4 of them to go along with Helsley, Romero. So that's 6. And you'll probably see Graceffo get a legitimate look as one of the relief pitchers. And then after that, I'm going to throw that other spot up for grabs. Yeah. Is it Zach Thompson? Is it Matthew Liberatore? Is it somebody else that we haven't seen a great deal of?
Andre Palante.
Palante is a guy.
I wouldn't mind, you start him at Memphis and make him a starter. He showed that he could start an inning and give you a few. Stretch him out again. He was a starter
I need more than 5 innings, though. I need a guy
stretch him out.
So that's a good point you make. So, there's some options here that I think we have to take a long, hard look at. But I think we saw enough of the guys last year in the bullpen who couldn't get the job done for one reason or another. Nothing personal, but I'd like to have a little bit more experience. I'd like to have a few more guys who have been in the fire before. And I need some guys who will take the ball with regularity.
They were guys, the names last year that were coming in there and pitching, they were names that were just getting you to the finish line at a certain point.
Yeah, because we needed somebody to pitch in the 8th inning.
I'm just talking about finish line of the season. They were just like, you know what? Point. Hey, season ends in September. Hey, we just need you to throw
and do what you can, man. Yeah. Yeah. The sooner you can get us out of here, the sooner we can look forward to next year.
Exactly. Hey, can you explain to me what the hell the Braves are doing this offseason?
Good question. I was reading where they acquired Matt Carpenter to trade him.
And they released him today.
They did?
They couldn't find anybody that wanted to trade him, so they released him already. They get Marco. They trade with the Mariners. They then turn around and flip those trades. They lost out on on Nola. They lost out on Sonny Gray. It doesn't look like they're gonna sign any of these other pitching. They're not gonna get Yamamoto. I don't know what they're doing right now. It's confusing.
It's a very good observation on your part because they have some young players. When you think about Acuna and you think about Albies and you think about the third baseman and you think about Strider, and they got a good catcher in Sean Murphy, they've got the nucleus to get right back in it. The question is, will they have enough healthy pitching? And the answer right now is we'll have to say we'll see because they're bringing some guys back who have dealt with some injuries. So I'm not sure what the whole concept was with Matt Carpenter. Because Matt might be at the end. That might be all she wrote for him. Maybe he'll get a spring training invite somewhere, but I don't see Matt Carpenter as being a guy that I would have been trading for unless they were taking his payroll off.
Let me ask you this before we wrap up the baseball part of this. If you took a 1-year flyer on one of these two or either of them, would you in Julio Urias or Trevor Bauer right now?
Good. Urias, I take a flyer on him because Bauer has a track record that has followed him everywhere he's been. Okay, I know the one woman we found out she was a fraud, but there's 3 other women, that also have issues with him also. So there's a pattern here. With Urias, we just don't know what else has gone on because that's been kind of quiet. But if I had to take one of the 2, I'd take Urias.
Yeah.
If I had my druthers, I'd go take somebody else. But that was the question you asked.
It was one or the other or neither. Those are your
Yeah.
options with that. You can't just throw out there some other name. Hey, we're going to take one final short break here, Claibs. When we come back, I am dying to hear your thoughts on the Blues situation from the past 5 days and talk that over when we come back here on the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show, powered by Ameren, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura here on Claibs Online.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Wrapping things up here on the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show, powered by Gray Bar, also driven by our friends at Munganast St. Louis Acura. Saw all of the boxes of toys that they had out there at the Acura location. 8 boxes filled, Toys for Tots, that they went through this weekend. I believe they're picking all those up today and sending them in. And Claibs, I know last week you and Clayton Patterson had a good talk about everything they're doing out there at Munganast as well.
Yeah, they have a lot going on, especially at this time of the year. And, it's never too late to have that big bow. I think they have a bunch of those bows in the back where they can put one on top of the car. As I mentioned, you can get a good price. There's a better selection than you're going to find around town. The service has always been consistent. But I think the variety, because you have a lot of pre-owned cars as well that are available to you also. And when you think about kids going back to school, or maybe the fact that they're old enough now where, you don't have to haul them around. Maybe they need something to get on the road themselves. This is not a bad time. They're looking to move some cars, and they're going to have one with your name on it, and they're going to have one with a price that you can work with. Multiple ways of financing. They have leasing as well. They even rent cars. So there's a lot of different ways you can get involved with Munganast. All you have to do is just tell them what you're thinking and let them take it from there.
Claibs, last week, the Blues fired head coach Craig Berube. The following day, Jordan Kyrou made comments that he has since walked back. The Blues, though, have won 2 games since the firing of Craig Berube. Your thoughts on just everything Blues-related that we have seen over the past, 7 days now?
Well, it was unfortunate that the Blues lost a good coach. Obviously, the message wasn't getting to certain players, and those players were partially responsible for him getting fired. Doug Armstrong owns part of it, and he readily admitted that he's at fault as well. This is not a star-stellar roster. This is not going to confuse you with the 94 Red Wings, okay? This is a team that has some holes in it. I was disappointed in Jordan Kyrou, and I know there was some that were like, well, he's a kid. He's young. He didn't know what he was doing. No, this guy's been in the league for 5 years. Yeah. He's on his 3rd coach, okay? So that was not an excuse to me. The fact that he was emotional, he should have been emotional about being part of the fact that they got a good man fired. He should have been emotional about the fact that he hasn't played well, period. He should have been emotional about those sort of things compared to the fans booing him. Granted, it's very unique to have Blues fans boo the home team players, okay? I go back to when Barry Gibbs was a captain in the late 70s. They booed him, but I think it had a lot more to do with he was a minus 41 that year. But when you look at what Kyrou has meant to this team, the fact that you didn't have to pay him when you did, the fact that he has not lived up to the expectations, and he's kind of the face of your hockey team. And when he's not performing, there's a problem. Now, Craig Berube obviously didn't know what the magic key was in order to get to Kyrou. But from the looks of things, when you talk to other people, nobody's been able to get to him. He's got all the talent in the world, but when it's all said and done, he's not stepped up. So we'll see what he does. He's played for this coach before in the minors, so we'll see if that has any impact. And maybe the fact that there's just a new messenger in the room might be able to move this team in a different direction. How far they go and how long they go, well, that's something we're all going to have to step back and pay attention to. But I think the way it ended was unfortunate, perhaps timely, but it should have been more of a soul-searching thing, because I don't think any player, you pick the sport, wants to be on a team where he was responsible for getting the coach fired or a manager fired. Now, you may have your personal differences. I get that. But when it comes down to you being able to fulfill the request of the coach, then that's your responsibility as a professional. And for what he said, just didn't go over well. And I was a little taken by the fact that he had people saying, well, he said it out of context. Well, how else am I supposed to read that?
Right.
You know, if there's another way that was supposed to be translated, I'd love to know what it was.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, everybody knew those two didn't get along, okay? I mean, they had verbal jousts on the bench in the midst of games. And that happens in the game. You know, managers, coaches, and players, they will have their moments on the sidelines or behind the bench or in the dugout. That comes with it. But they seem like they've taken it to a personal level, at least Cairo, because he made it clear to many people around town his disdain for Craig Berube. So this isn't something that just was spawned overnight. It's been around for a while. Now that Berube's out of the room, we'll see what happens.
Claibs bragging rights is on Friday. Your level of interest in that game?
It depends on what kind of tickets Howard Richards gets us.
Okay.
Frank was sitting last year. Frank was sitting in the second row. No, he's sitting in the first row at midcourt. I can be part of Frank's family this year.
Well, you let me know. You let me know, and I'll take that extra ticket off Howard then.
We haven't seen enough of Illinois to know what they are. And, you know, Missouri dropped one to Seton Hall yesterday. It really kind of goes back, Joe, to the whole portal transfer thing. Nobody knows who they have on their team. And you won't know until the middle of January because you've been playing a soft schedule, non-conference wise. Now, there have been some teams that have played some tougher games. That's only because the networks pay those conferences to have those matchups. But when you look at St. Louis U, you look at some of the teams on Missouri schedule, you look at Illinois schedule, it's not mouthwatering. And because we don't know what Illinois is all about, I can tell you this, they'll be ready for Missouri compared to what happened last year because Missouri smothered Illinois early and never recovered. So I don't anticipate a game like that this year, but I do anticipate a very spirited contest.
Anything else you're working on this week, Claibs?
Well, we're efforting the Orlando Pace Howard Richards sit down. If both of those can clear their schedules up, we'd like to do that this week. We'll get into a little bit more hockey talk later in the week as the Blues are out on a road trip for the rest of the week. So we have those things working for us. And, of course, the NFL is in full swing. We'll huddle up with Howard later in the week as well. So a lot of good things coming your way.
All right. Until then, he is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show, powered by Graybar, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura. And if you missed any of it, you can catch the replay of it on the podcast or on our YouTube channel. Go back and watch it there as well. Until then, this has been another edition of the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show right here on ClaibsOnline.com.
There's always been a bright side to living in downstate Illinois. Ameren, Illinois is making it even brighter with a little help from the sun. Right now, we're building a next-generation solar facility to bring you cleaner energy for generations to come. It's good for the environment, your neighborhood, and everyone living in downstate Illinois. That's brighter thinking. That's energy at work. Learn how you can participate in solar programs at amerenillinois.com/renewables.